Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Top Chef Judges Roundtable podcast. Unpack your knives and stay. We're down another person this week. So Haley is still off in Portugal, and Latanya unfortunately could not make it. But I am so pleased to have longtime friend of the show join us today, Chef Jim Smith. Jims, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and as always, it's awesome to be here. I'm really bummed. I'm bummed I'm missing the other two, but it's nice. It'll be nice to have a little bit of one-on-one session. I know Portugal sounds great. That's part of Europe I've never been to, and Latanya, I just want to make sure that I congratulate her on her new job at Harvard. The old, I'm sure they've been retired for a long time, but there used to be this couple of their name, Dallas and Sherry. They were they're the debate coaches at Harvard for a long time, and good friends of mine. In fact, I showed up to an NDT one year with a case of sparkling wine, and Dallas and Sherry are big foodies themselves, and they were really excited to see that somebody brought something decent to drink.
Nice, yeah, and obviously we'll find another time to bring you back when we have the full team here. I remember last time was a lot of fun even in the finale where it was all four of us plus Owen from Survivor. So we'll see what we can get going, but definitely want to have you back again. And speaking of coming back again, this was the returnee from Last Chance Kitchen. We saw. I was a little bit surprised last week, honestly, that they told us who was coming back, because I feel like so many times they'll give you the cliffhanger on who won, and then they'll kind of just give it back to you that next week. But we knew Bailey was coming back, but I feel like the chefs seemed a little bit surprised, but I wasn't sure. What was your take on Bailey's return, either in terms of the chef's reaction or even just like her performance this episode?
Well, I think that the chefs were probably happy to see her. I mean, it's not like this. She was eliminated in the first episode, so there was time for the other chefs to build bonds and to work with her and to sort of understand how she is in the kitchen. And I suspect all of them were very, very, very excited. I mean, none of them saw for sure how well she performed in Last Chance Kitchen. I think probably. Some of them probably also thought, oh, she's back again. That'll be a good person. Because she did not perform well. Those dishes before she got sent home were really kind of scattershot and weird and kind of difficult, I think. So I think that the chefs are both excited, and they're probably more excited that it's not someone that they don't know. I think all of them are expecting the possibility of someone random, a newbie in the show, and that would be sort of a much harder to prepare for or to think about, really.
Yeah, that's a fair point. The especially with Sue from last year, I think they saw that anything was potentially on the table here, and she came back with immunity, which was like nice in terms of getting her feet under. I agree with what you said. Like, it feels a little bit like Last Chance Kitchen was almost more of a chance for her to like reset and recenter versus necessarily like some sort of I'm sure it was a high pressure situation, but it also seemed to her to actually be a benefit to have to come back in. And not to bury the lead here, but now her interest in having immunity for 2 weeks in a row. So
yeah,
that's crazy.
And I do think that's great. It definitely it solves the brother luck problem, like giving them immunity. I really like the structure of this. Like, okay, the winner of the last episode, that's the odd number. Whoever that odd number is gets whoever's coming back from Last Chance Kitchen, and both of them get safety. I do think that was a very good mechanism. It prevents the brother luck problem, and then it opens them up to just sort of be creative and to be comfortable and cooking simple food, which I think is probably a thing that is really difficult when you're thinking about Top Chef. You're like, oh, did I do this cool thing and that cool thing? And ultimately, a lot of times the simplicity is the best. I mean, less is more. Sometimes more is more, but a lot of times less is more. And if you're not worried about it, and you can just sort of like embrace the simplicity of your food, I think that's a little sometimes scarier than maybe sort of doing a complex dish or relying on a bunch of technique. And so I thought they did awesome. I think this is a good strategy. And there you go, safe into the next episode.
Yeah, this was the episode where they had to, obviously it was going to be a team challenge. We can talk as we go through on like, should this have been a team? Should it have been head to head? I didn't personally mind the teams, but they were each kind of assigned through knife draw a different culture in Toronto. And just my game head structure wise, I was like, okay, how did they work this? And well, when Tristan pulled a knife out of the knife block, there were 12 knives, and he drew the Greek knife. When the next person drew the knife out of the knife block, pausing my DVR, there were 10 knives. So they they must have removed the other Greek knife there, because I was trying to figure like how did they ensure that nobody else pulled that Bailey. Nobody else would partner up with Tristan. So I did have to do some strategic DVR pausing. So it looked like, once he drew the Greek knife, then they got the other one out of there just to ensure that that they were paired up. So I think that was one of the predictions that we had from last week, was if she's going to have immunity, Tristan's going to have immunity. It just makes sense for them to partner up. But we saw that the 6 cuisines were Caribbean, Portuguese, Royal Thai, Indian, Filipino, and Greek. If you knew that these were the 6 cuisines that were going to be on the table, is there one that you'd have been like, I want this one? Is there one that you'd have been like, let's not, if I could avoid that, that would be great?
Not really. I think that I know how to cook dishes that are related to all of these. And these are pretty mainstream, I would say, not necessarily mainstream, but they are cuisines that probably most chefs are familiar with. I mean, I think these are pretty familiar cuisines, and even though chefs may not know sort of in depth about each of them individually, I think that they're pretty common. Like for me, Caribbean food is always a good choice for someone like me, because Caribbean food and Southern food are very similar. The regions are slightly different, but sort of they're all heavily influenced by the African diaspora, and so there's a lot of shared ingredients and sort of the connection to the ocean. Those are that one would be a great one for me. But at the same time, that also even though not African diaspora, but the Greek food is sort of a similar way. That's a very seafood centric kind of area. I make tons of curry and love Indian spices, and so both India and Thailand or the Royal Thai cuisine would both sort of work well for what I do. I would do sort of lots of Southeast Asian cooking. So for me, I think that these countries and sort of types of food aren't really. It's not like they're let's break out the Icelandic cuisine or something really weird, you're working with whale blubber or really ingredients that are hard to deal with or really surprising. But I think these are pretty approachable, and the fact that you get to go and spend time in the kitchen makes them even more so.
I thought that was a great opportunity, the kind of just seeing these cuisines in action, hearing the owners of the restaurants talk a bit about them. But the idea of being thrown into a new restaurant's lunch rush, where I'm not necessarily familiar with, even if I was familiar with the cuisine, I might not be familiar with their specific menu. Is that as difficult as I'm thinking it would be, or are you actually, is it something that a seasoned chef, no pun intended, could basically get their feet underneath them pretty quickly?
I'm not sure which mentor said this to me along the way, and I do think it to be true, is I think that any talented chef or line cook should be able to walk into anybody else's restaurant, them tell you, these are the 3 dishes that come off your station. This is the mise en place for them. Any good chef should be able to look at that stuff that's laid out, look at the menu, and then just sort of talk to the chef and be able to execute it. Now, whether or not you've worked a wok station before is one thing, but really, I think that if you walk into a station and say, these are the 3 dishes that come off your station, here's the mise en place for them, you sort of look at the menu, you should be able to step in and execute on a high level, no matter what it is, whether it's picking up a shift at the Waffle House or staging at a Michelin starred restaurant. I think that the best chefs can look at what you got, understand the menu, and understand how to execute it pretty easily.
Yeah, maybe it's because my backline experience is pretty limited to American roast beef served fast. It's just that was that's the sort of thing where I would wake up at 2 a.m. in a cold sweat because I just had a nightmare about this. Not knowing the food, not knowing what goes where, just messing everything up. But again, not a seasoned chef. I speak of the different as they explored the different cuisines and after they had drawn knives. I got a message on Facebook from Ali Gincola asking me, where she'd been listening to the I think it was the Pack Your Knives podcast. Apologies, Ali, if I'm getting it wrong, but she was talking about how when the serving order, that also actually impacts your strategy. like if you know you're going first versus you know you're going last. And I had to have a chance to listen to the podcast that she referred me to, but you having been on the show and like been through different instances where people had to serve in a specific order. From your experience, is there like a strategy that goes to like if you know you're going first versus you know you're going last, or somewhere in between?
I mean, there is for sure a little bit. Like if you know that you're going towards the end, you need to make sure that the dish that you made is going to hold very well. And sometimes it's really evident in like the photographs of the people's food that they show online, like or like on during the program. If you see something that looks like not nearly as pretty as what the judges had, you sort of know that plate's been probably sitting around for an hour. I do think that the judges are pretty fair and understanding about, like, they know that if your dish has to be plated, but you're the last one, they're not going to really ding you if it's not hot after you plated the dish 30 minutes ago. But at the same time, if your dish isn't hot because you plated it 30 minutes ago and you're at the end of the line, maybe you should have thought about something that would hold a little bit better until you get to the end. I mean, it is important to think about all of those things all of the time, but at the same time, I don't really think the contestants aren't really being punished if there is sort of a big gap between when they plated their food and when the judges taste.
Did you get to pick the order? Like in this case, just from your experience, were they likely told this is going to go first, this is going to go next, et cetera? Or did the judges or did the contestants kind of get to negotiate amongst themselves over who goes when?
I mean, really the only time where there was a specific order known, it would be if it was like a progressive or like a tasting menu situation where, like somebody's assigned to the amuse. But also at the same time, like you really never know. Like on a quick fire challenge, you may say, "Oh, I'm sitting at the end. I'm on the last table in the corner. That means they're definitely going to start with me first." But then the producers may decide to start them like in the middle of the row, and so you don't really know where they're going to start. Or production may have reasons why they want to start with somebody or why they want to finish with somebody. So it's really hard to predict that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think just we saw like some elements of the challenge today that we'll often see like randomly throughout an episode or a season of Top Chef. So for example, this was like the 2-night cook where they have to like do a bunch of prep the day before, then load it onto the carts and use a lot of saran wrap. I'm assuming that is just so things don't get jostled in the transport over to the actual site.
Yeah, and they will tell you that you cannot wrap your speed rack after the buzzer goes off. So you've got to make sure that your stuff is wrapped. That's part of your time. And so if it's not wrapped really well, it may just get jostled and it may slip around. They just load those things up in like moving vans and drive them across town. And so you want to make sure that there's no no moving van dirt is going to get into your stuff. You also want to make sure that just sort of as it gets jostled, stuff isn't getting messed up or knocked off the sheet pan or if the speed rack, But in the industry, we do also wrap speed racks up like that, especially if you work in a place where like maybe you're doing prep work in the basement of somewhere, then you have to wheel it onto an elevator to go upstairs for service or something. So really, that kind of preparation it makes sure things stay safe and sanitary. But it is part of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think again, goldfish brain. I don't think that I recall a time in Top Chef history where that's ever at least been talked about as an issue, where someone's arrives at the site and their speed rack is there, new term I've learned, and they're like, oh, this tipped over, got ruined, was destroyed in some regard during the transit. It seems like if that, maybe it's because that's so close to almost like talking about production in some ways, like that. Was that ever an issue in the seasons you were on?
No, and not. I'm trying to remember. I don't think it has ever happened, or if it has happened, it may have been edited out. Like there may be a reason why they're so serious about make sure it's wrapped, make sure it's part of the time. It could be that in one of those earlier seasons, something disastrous did happen, and they didn't really have. You really can't punish the contestants for their stuff getting messed up in transit. There was always the pea puree is sort of a thing, sort of like packaging versus like, I know I did it. It was wrapped up in my thing, but now I can't find it. So I think it just kind of prevents any sort of that kind of stuff from happening. Yeah.
And then also in addition to like that, the 2-day cook, which we see quite frequently, I feel a little bit less frequently we get these kind of like outdoor Insta setup mini kitchens for the chefs to cook in. Like, are there like, talk through like any experiences you've had with those on the show, and like, what are some of like the unique kind of things that you need to anticipate or that might pop up that you wouldn't normally have had to deal with?
Yeah, I do think that sometimes for some of these challenges, you get like a list of equipment that you could potentially use. And so they want to make sure that they have their bases covered. So like whether you want to have a charcoal grill, like we saw them using that. We also saw a flat top being used. We saw fryers being used. So any of that kind of equipment, the production will give you a list and they'll say, mark everything that you might need. There may be some limitations on stuff. You can't just sort of like mark the whole list. But yeah, they give you a list and say, this is what you can choose from. There may have been a limit, like there may sort of be a electricity kind of limitations too. Like, okay, your station only has access to 2 plugs. So make sure that like you don't need to plug in 4 things at one time. But yeah, for the most part, they're pretty flexible and understanding about that. And just sort of like, if you need a RoboCoo and a blender and a flat top, they'll make sure that you have all that stuff there.
Nice.
But it is important to plan ahead. Just so like if you're worried about some part of your dish not working, and you know that you may need an immersion blender in case of an emergency to sort of like re-emulsify something, or if you're worried that your sauce may break and maybe you need to sneak some xanthan gum in your equipment to go on there too. So it is important to make sure that you have your bases covered and then also have some contingencies in there in case something does go wrong.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about our pairs. There are various the cultures they were immersed in and how their dishes ended up doing. One note is, as I saw the pairs being drawn, I was like, oh, one of my draft players is in this pair. One of my draft players is in this pair. And the only pair that did not have a draft team in was Kat and Corwin. So somehow I still have not lost a single person in this game. And sorry, Latanya and Haley. So the first pair we'll talk about, and these are in the order that they served the judges. Paula and Massimo, they went to Miss Micklemore's restaurant to kind of get immersed in there and be part of the line, and Caribbean style. And
did you look at the website?
What was that?
I visited the websites of all these restaurants.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
And so this one looks awesome. This is a sort of, I would definitely say, sort of high-end Caribbean food. And the website looks awesome. And that chef Lonnie really, I mean, like her instruction was great in there. It looks like an excellent restaurant to me.
Yeah, this is like it's been a while since I've been to Toronto. I just got back from like eating my way through the entire city of Boston. I'll talk more about that later. But yeah, this makes me want to do like a Toronton food tour. The Caribbean dish they made was a braised short rib with grilled flatbread, escabeche with sweet plantain vinegar. They had a little bit of, this was one of the 3 teams I was a little bit concerned about, not so much from the dish itself, but just from the working dynamic. And I think this is like this is the first time in a while I feel like we've had like this level of other teams' commentary on their working dynamic versus just the. But it seemed like Massimo, at the very least, he was like, "I apologize for being an asshole." Like he acknowledged it and he apologized for it. And I think he seems the type where it's like, once I'll just say it and we're good. And it seemed like they ended up being safe. But what was your thought on Paula and Massimo, either on their dish or like having a dynamic like this in the kitchen?
Yeah, I thought that they ended up doing pretty well. I mean, it really is hard to trust these chefs if you've seen them cook and you've never really maybe not have worked together, or if you know that sort of like 2 big personalities are getting paired together, like what's going to happen. But I do feel like they did a good job of ultimately working together. Like sometimes you just gotta, if someone snaps at you, you gotta snap back, or you just either gotta take it or work with them or like figure out what the best strategy is. But I thought that they did a pretty good job of like getting over sort of their differences. Part of their issue is that they chose to braise short ribs, and they were doing them in Instapots, which is fine. Like you can get a really good braise done in like a pressure cooker like that. But at the same time, you really do have to pay attention to it, and sort of like, he wants the sauce to be thicker, so he takes the lid off and she puts it back on because she doesn't want to lose that much liquid. That's just kind of like small things. I don't think it affected their dish all that much. To me, the more impressive thing is sort of like watching Massimo roll out the little flatbreads. Like he's just like cranking them out. Like for me, like that's what I want to see. Like the person I'm working with, like they're moving fast. They're like cranking out the prep like they're supposed to. Like that. To me, that's all. I was like, okay, yeah, like that bread may be the best part of the dish, but it's going to be executed really well. Or and also that was a risk for sure, because what they did was they wrapped up their bread and let the yeast work overnight. And so they're just keeping their fingers crossed that, has it risen enough when we open it up in the morning? They don't really know, has it only been in a walk-in? Did they get pushed into the transport truck and sit in 80-degree weather for 6 hours before it got unloaded? So that was a risk, but I thought it turned out, amazingly well.
It's kind of a portable proofing drawer in some regards. Thank you, Bake Off, for teaching me the art of proofing. No, I thought the same thing. That was in my notes. Was literally Massimo was a machine. It was coming to the speed rolling of the dough, and they had to crank out 150 or 154 portions or what have you. So that was he was in the zone. He was getting that done, and just was it was I thought I was watching it on 1.5 or 2 speed. It was he was a beast. They end up being safe. Well, next up, though, not as safe, a little bit more eliminated, was Kat and Corwin. They were cooking Portuguese food, and they had kind of a training session in Mercado. Did you get a chance? You got a chance to check out their site, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah, the Mercado page also looks really excellent. I will think there are a couple of surprises which may surprise you on this list, but the Mercado, it looked incredibly beautiful. Those shots on the TV looked really great. If you go to their website, they didn't really have the hanging garden, but where they had the hanging garden on the show, they used to have lined up with a bunch of colorful umbrellas. It's a really beautiful patio. This is not several of these restaurants are super expensive. This one is definitely on the pricier end, but it looks kind of it's a little bit tapas-y, but it's also kind of real traditional kind of Portuguese food, which did look excellent. Portuguese, everyone knows sort of port from Portugal, but Portuguese wine has a giant tradition of sort of non-fortified wines, which are really great, really excellent. The food tradition of Portugal is amazing. The Portuguese being sort of one of those original sort of imperialist countries means that they have a lot of both international, a lot of Portuguese influence in other people's cuisine, but also a lot of other people's cuisines influence the Portuguese as well. And so it does make it a very unique food community and a cool food in general.
I did not make any sort of connection between port and Portugal. That's tell me more about that. That's where it originated, or just it's just the most common sweet wine? Okay.
Yeah, the Portuguese, as they're as they're expanding their dominance all over the globe, what happened is sort of they would realize that once they left Portugal with their still red wine, by the time they made it to the Americas, the wine had turned. It's not sort of bottled today. There's no Stelvin enclosures or screw caps on wines or rubber corks to make sure that things are stored properly. They're probably just packing up barrels of wine onto ships, and they get jostled, they get messed up. And so what they realized was that they wanted to have good wine when they made it to the shores of wherever they were landing. But they realized that you could fortify wine with a stronger proof alcohol to make it last longer. And that's what port is. That's why it has a higher proof. And that's, it's port because it's from Portugal. And so Portuguese is kind of interesting too, because they use a wide variety of grapes that aren't necessarily known for other parts of Europe. They have a bunch of their own sort of indigenous grapes that are used in port, and also in their still red and white wines as well. But Portugal is one of the sort of very famous food and wine community, and port is really imperialism. There's some good things that we enjoy today from imperialism. Things like port is example of one of them.
If I'd gunned ahead, if I'd been asked to explain the origin, I would have said something about, when they shipped it, it would always be on the left side of the ship and I'd make up some reason, but okay, that a simple explanation that I completely overlooked. They went with cod and shrimp bamba with a saffron aioli, smoked roe, piri piri, and pickles. No saltfish at Whole Foods for Kat and Corwin. That seems to be the huge issue, especially in terms of not having it on hand, and also them constantly when they were talking about it, both when serving it and when discussing it at judges' table, they mentioned several times, it seems, we were looking for saltfish, but ... And I think Tom's feedback was, why tell us that? Like, why make that part of the story? What was your, and this was the second team I was thinking might be in trouble early on in the episode, when there was the whole, we're looking for saltfish and all we can find is cod, and we're going to pivot, but kind of like, but not fully pivot. Like, we're still going to try to make it work as opposed to trying to make a completely new dish. What was your thought on the whole saltfish fiasco?
Well, Tom is exactly right when you say, you should never say we wanted to do this, but they didn't have it, so we had to do that, but we didn't really change our recipe that much. Like that, I mean, Tom understands having to pivot. The real question is, in my mind, were they forced to write down what they wanted to make before they went shopping? Like, did they have to turn in their recipe before they went to Whole Foods? If that's the case, then they're kind of stuck in trying to explaining why their recipe says salt cod when all they could get was cod. Now, I think they might have been better off to try to like brine the cod themselves or do something to make it more like salt cod. But I think the other problem is just sort of like when you, a lot of times people make this mistake in the kitchen all the time. Like if you're using flour in a dish, and say for instance you're making like a soup with a roux or something like that, like you can't just add more flour after everything is mixed up and sort of like hope it's going to work right. And this is a little bit different because it is sort of like the filling of a croquette or whatever. But when I saw them just add more flour, and I'm like, oh, that's the wrong decision, because then like you have some flour that's, the glutens have been activated, then you have certain like raw flour going in at the end to try to make it adhere better, but then to get it mixed in, you're going to have to work it anyway, which may very well overwork the flour that you already had in there before. And so when they were describing the dish as mushy, like the filling is mushy, I kind of think it had to do with it wasn't the fish part of the problem. I think it's sort of like they didn't have the right consistency, and by the time the consistency was wrong, it was almost too late. Like, you just can't throw more flour in and hope it's going to work. And I mean, I understand it. I think that honestly, if it would have been me, I would have just been like squeezing it. Like I would have been like trying to like, like push the excess water out of there some way, whether it's maybe they had like a perforated sheet pan. They could, like a perforated pan that they could use to smash down and get some more of that liquid out. Honestly, I probably would just sort of squeezing them, like roll them, squeeze them, roll them, and then bread them, just to try to limit that, to limit the sort of the issue that they had there.
Right.
But,
and,
yeah.
Okay. No, good.
No, that's really it. It's just, it's hard to know. Like, it really is sort of like when they had to did they write the recipe after they went to Whole Foods or before? Because that will, it's a real hard to find the balance. Like, you made a mistake in a dish. Do you want to act like that's what you meant to do the whole time? Do you just want to lean into it and be like, that's the way it had to be? Do you edit the dish? Do you take something off and say, look, I don't care that this component didn't make it on the dish because I did not think it was of the quality that I wanted to serve. Or, if it's close to the quality that you want to serve, you don't think it's going to mess up the dish, but that way, if you put it a little bit on there, you don't have to explain to the judges why I didn't make it. There's a lot of those kind of internal debates that are going on with all of these dishes that you have to think about before you decide like what your final choice is. And I think usually the right answer is, if you don't think it should be on the dish, just tell the judges it was unnecessary. Tell them that you didn't like it as you tasted it at the end. Let them know the reason why you chose to delete an ingredient. And most of them would prefer a more simplistic dish anyway, will probably respect the fact that you realize that something was bad and you didn't serve it.
Right. And we didn't talk about, like, what the guest judge on this was Sarah Bradley, former Top Chef contestant. It was great seeing her. And she was saying during judges' table also, like, I think it sounded like she was critiquing some of the decision to add more salt, because salt would kind of leach out some of the moisture. But I guess I don't know if, did you get the point of what she was saying? Because I was thinking, like, it sounded like it was too gummy and had excess moisture. But should the salt have leached that out, or what? I
think she was saying kind of like what I was saying earlier, is that I think that they probably should have done a light cure, like a salt cure on the fish the day before, then rinsed off that cure really well, and then when you rinse off the cure and the salt or whatever you're curing it in, then you'll also lose that excess moisture in there as well. And I kind of think that what she was saying is that, at least that's kind of how I took it, is that they should have prepared the fish a little bit differently, because it looked to me like they kind of like poached the fish and flaked it, and maybe they did brine it a little bit in a liquid brine. But I think they would have probably better served to do a dry brine, or and then try to like leach that stuff out. Then the next day, rinse it really good, dry it really good, then flake it. they might have had a better result. But you're right. I wasn't exactly quite sure what she meant by that, but I think she was saying that they should have prepped the fish a little bit different the day before.
Right. And talk about like just random note. Would not have picked this out as Sarah. Like her haircut completely changes her look. Like I was like, I had to literally, like, it said Sarah Bradley Freight House on the screen, and I still had to like just double check that it was the same Sarah Bradley. Anyway, she looked amazing. Great to have her back on the screen again, back on our show. Next up, we had Katiana and Cesar, who went to, I believe it's pronounced Keen. It's Kiin, which was a Thai restaurant. Before we get to their dish, it sounds like you checked out all these sites. What was your impression of their time at Keen, or your time on browsing their menu?
Keen is, first of all, they're a Michelin-starred restaurant in 23 and 24. This is probably the fanciest, or at least the most high-end restaurant of all of them, in that they serve. They do have an a la carte menu, but they do nightly tasting menus, and they do nightly vegetarian tasting menus as well. So this is a restaurant that definitely is sort of on a big scale, heavy awarded, lots of sort of intricate dishes, very cool. Like if you look at their tasting menus, it's both written in Thai and the English translations underneath. It looked like an amazing place. There's really cool information about the chef. Chef, I think it looks like Nui is how you say her name. It's spelled Nuit. But it looks amazing. This to me, like I after sort of like watching them in the kitchen, like it's hard to sort of gauge like, oh yeah, this place is sort of like maybe like the most awarded restaurant that they went to of the group. But after you saw the awesome little purple dumplings, you're like, maybe I should have given it away.
Those look so beautiful. I was like, at first I thought it was just like a floral garnish, not realizing that was the dumpling itself, when that was like made with the purple came from the pea flower, correct?
Yes.
I've only had that as like part of a magical beverage where like you add it and it changes the like entire color of the beverage. But yeah,
there's a real famous Canadian gin too. It's called Empress. It's purple gin. Oftentimes you see a lot of modern cocktails that look purple probably have some Empress gin in them, but which is good because it is made from the pea flower.
And do you know the difference between Thai cuisine and royal Thai cuisine? Because they did emphasize several times that it was royal Thai.
No, and it's really a distinction that I did not know about. But I do think it is still sort of Thai cuisine, but it is definitely Thai cuisine that's designed for like royal families, like and elevated. Sort of like this super elevated style of cuisine. And it's not surprising that there are differences like that. I always sort of think of the Chinese forbidden rice example is another thing, kind of like that. Like in China, you don't consume black rice, but the only place it was allowed to be served was in the Forbidden City. And so like we have access to Chinese black rice all the time, but it seems like I don't really know the intricacies. Maybe there's some more kind of cool stuff like that in royal Thai cuisine, but it does seem awesome. Like you can sort of like, I mean, for me in America, I'd say where most Thai restaurants are very similar to kind of like people view Asian foods a lot of times through this lens of like chop suey restaurants from the 60s. Like we were introduced to Asian food as sort of like the cheap street food, but a lot of times people don't realize that there's that sort of super high-end versions of Asian cuisine, whether it's Thai, whether it's Chinese, whether it's Japanese cuisine. There is, we Americans, we were introduced to these foods through a weird lens, which oftentimes like people think that, oh, it's lo mein, or, it's just pad Thai, when the reality of the situation is that there's much cooler, intricate, like elevated versions of these foods.
Yeah, this is of the 6 restaurants and of the 6 dishes, like this was the one I would have been, I think, most intrigued by. They made a pad Thai glazed tenderloin, pickled mushrooms, and butterfly pea flower pickles. I just really also kind of fell in love with their dynamic to some extent. Like they were both like, it seemed like, especially like as Katiana was describing it, they seemed like they were potentially polar opposites. And I think it's in those situations, I always think it's good that the more frantic, high energy person, if they recognize that the other person can kind of ground them and calm them down, then it tends to work a little bit more, versus it's like work within the dynamic instead of trying to change the dynamic. And so I loved, and Katiana was right at home making the little purple flowers, and Cesar was singing while chopping up scallions. And this was I just really enjoyed the heck out of watching this team.
Yeah, they did have an awesome, very, very chill, like calm
Yeah.
dynamic. But you could sort of tell that all of like as they're making all these things, like they loved the peanut coconut mixture that was part of the filling and what they tasted. You know, like the way in which they treated the steak using the sort of like Thai ingredients to marinate it and serve it super rare. Tenderloin is kind of a cool choice because to me, like when you think about tenderloin as like super rare, you think about it. They almost gave it like a carpaccio kind of treatment. I mean, it's definitely cut a little bit thicker, but you know, you get that super rare tenderloin that's served cold on top of like some more sort of like you can imagine sort of the peanuts and the coconut. And I think that they were probably using like fish sauce and other cool stuff in their marinades. You get sort of like big complex sort of Southeast Asian flavors in a way in which makes a lot of sense. And then also very clearly informed by their experience that they learned what they learned at the restaurant. I thought it was a really good example of good teamwork, really great usage of the inspiration from the restaurant. And I thought they just did a really cool job.
Yeah, and what I found that was actually kind of interesting also was when they were announcing the top two teams of Bailey and Tristan and Katiana and Cesar. Like Bailey and Tristan like were jumping up and down and hugging each other, and like over at the other end, they're just kind of like standing there smiling. Like they were happy, but they weren't like effusive in their joy, which I also thought was kind of interesting. I was like, just like I expected a hug. Maybe the hug didn't make the edit, but it was I was pretty sure they were going to be in the top two based on the judges' comments. Next, we had Lana and Vinny, who had Indian food. We learned kind of in the drive over to, I believe it is Dulce, that Vinny not that well versed in Indian food, and Lana's like, I know even less than Vinny. They were greeted with a nice bouquet of flowers. Like obviously, and you could, I think not just here, but I think through all the restaurants, obviously there's an excitement about having like the Top Chef camera crew in there and the Top Chef teams in there. But you could also get a sense from all of these owners, these chefs, that they're also like really excited to share their cuisine and like what it means to them. Like there was like, especially I think with this restaurant, there was a lot about like cooking with love and cooking with heart, and you have to put that into your cooking. So you also got to see not just what goes into the dish, but also like almost like the philosophy behind what was being made. So what was your take on Dulce?
This one may surprise you. Well, first of all, apparently this is not. I don't know, this may be part of a restaurant group, but they have restaurants internationally, maybe more so than even just in Canada. Because I was on a site, they had the same kind of like heart-shaped logo, but then I typed in Canada and it sent me to a different restaurant as well. But you may find it surprising, Karma Sutra chicken not on their menu.
No,
it is not like you go to the menu online and there is no. Now I kind of suspected it's chicken korma. Because there are definitely beef and chicken kormas on their menu. I guess it could be butter chicken, but there was no Kama Sutra chicken on the menu, which I did find surprising. You think at least if it was about regular on the menu after Top Chef, they would at least label something that put it on their online menu. But
it was described, I think, on the screen as like a cashew-based sauce, which I thought was really interesting.
I think korma is like that. Korma is supposed to have cashews, and it's supposed to have a little tomato, and it's supposed to have golden raisins in it. And I think that that's kind of why I was thinking korma, but it's hard to know. I'm not an expert in Indian cuisine either, but I eat a lot of it.
That disappoints me immensely. That I mean, don't get me wrong. I kind of enjoyed the hypercut compilation of Vinny being, like the book. Yep, like the book. And
I was ready for full bloom Vinny. Like he missed his opportunity.
Although young Vinny at Noble, the flashback photo looks even more like our broadcaster Mike Bloom. I was like, oh my God, like I haven't seen Mike in person in I think like a year or two. So maybe, I don't know, maybe this is actually him. But this was also where I think they were discussing the dish. And I believe during the first episode, Lana and Vinny were on the same team, and Lana was not quite trusted. Like this is where he was trying to serve the soup in an apple bowl. And so it feels like she's grown to trust him. She's like, I'm having a hard time envisioning it. And so this was the third of the 6 teams that I was a bit worried for because of that. But it kind of scaled back a bit for me in terms of fear when she's like, you know what? This tastes great. Like Lana fell in love with the dish. She trusted him. I thought that maybe she would get a little annoyed with his patter, his sales patter. But no, she said she was enjoying it. But it seemed like the issue here was almost too much of trying. Like we always say, we want the contestants to put a bit of themselves and their story or their approach to cooking into these dishes. But it almost seemed like Vinny may have gone too far in that direction, because it seemed like the top complaint from the judges was that you didn't let the Indian origins or ingredients or inspiration shine through. It was hard to get the Indian essence from this dish.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely sort of an issue that a lot of young chefs have, and especially when you're starting out on your own. Like Vinny, obviously incredibly talented. His resume reads like the best resume, the best restaurants in the world, and that is you cannot exchange that experience for anything. There are a couple of things though when you work in the best restaurants in the world. Like if you work at Danielle, it may take you 5 years to make it from the basement to the line. And if you spend your first 4 years in the basement making one profiterole 100 times a day for 4 years, you're learning a lot of stuff about what's going on in that restaurant, but you're not learning necessarily how to execute it all. Now, Vinny sort of has the same. It's not the same problem, but it's a different kind of problem. It's that you work at some of the most amazing restaurants in the world, and you want to take what you've learned at those places, and you want to develop your own style of cuisine directly from that. And that's I think Bourdain has this great quote about chefs. Being a chef is a mentorship. It's all about mentorship. It's not about just about training and like getting a degree from college and then making your own. You have to be taught these things. And I think that the problem with this dish is that it was too close to the inspiration of a dish and a technique that he learned at Nomad, which is great technique. You're making your hollandaise. You're emulsifying your sauce, and you're charging it up, and then you're using the charger to make it light and fluffy and airy to finish the dish. The problem with that is that it's just too directly inspired. Like you could see, they showed a picture of the dish that he served, the same dish, and it looked almost identical to it. But just adding a little bit of like Madras curry into that same sauce isn't really that different or that inspired. It's just sort of like, and it's a hard balance to make. Like I know that, like for me, when I opened the restaurant, one of the chefs that I learned the most from is famous for a crab cake, and so I did not want to put a crab cake on the menu of my restaurant, just because I didn't want people to think, this guy Jim learned this from him, and here's his version of the crab cake, and it's on his menu here. And so ultimately, what happened was sort of like one of these days where we couldn't get the fish we wanted. There was like an emergency food situation. All we could get is crab. I said, I'm gonna make a crab cake, but then you sort of like make sure it's very different from the crab cake that you learned from your old boss. But at the same time, I took a lot of that same inspiration, like asking the chef, like, why do you choose not to put green bell peppers in your crab cake? Well, what he mentored me in is that, that green bell pepper is too strong for the delicate nature of the crab. And so for me, like that is something that I was mentored into understanding from the chef, even though I want my version of this dish to be very different than his dish. And so it is a hard balance to strike. So say, for instance, another mentor of mine loved to make smoked mayonnaise. I'd serve smoked mayonnaise. And so I'd even ask him, like, hey, do you want me to call this Anthony's smoked mayonnaise? And he said, no, like it can be, that's also your thing. Like you learned it from me. It's also now your thing. And so it is hard to find the right balance. Like you don't want to be perceived as stealing dishes from other people, but at the same time, you want to take what you've learned and use that in a way to make your own dishes. And that's a lot of times what Top Chef is all about, especially these people that have the best resumes in the world, is that like, can you push these people into taking what they've learned from Nomad or from John George or from, wherever, Kren, or whoever you've worked for, and then use what you've learned and then make it your own. And then tweak it, and more than just make it your own, but like use what you've learned to make something new and different and beautiful. And that is a real hard balance to find, especially for younger chefs who have these incredible resumes. sometimes, as I say, sometimes an incredible resume may just mean that you've been making, one bonbon in the basement of Danielle for 4 years. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're, know how to do their most famous dish, but you can probably definitely execute that bonbon on an incredibly high level. So, but
Yeah,
I do think that was the problem with the dish. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I think it was in last week's episode. I was talking about just like my background in like consumer behavior, consumer strategy, like listening to the needs of your consumer and delivering them either what they expect or what they didn't know they wanted through like kind of like surprise and delight sort of thing. Like whether it was hearing like from the like, oh, I'm going to make us a souffle because he said souffle, or like putting the gold flakes in Michael Cera's dish as a callback to the movie that he was in, Superbad. But I think we also all about that. But at the same time, there's shows like I think like Project Runway where you're helping create a something for somebody, like in that case something that they're going to wear. But it's not just about bowing to their need. It's about making sure that you're represented in the final product as well. And I think that's one of the things that they said at judges table is that we know, it felt like they were saying that they know much more about who Vinny has cooked with than they know about Vinny's take on his approach to cooking. So glad he's safe because I think he's got a lot more to give us. And maybe this will like get him to kind of think about things a little bit differently moving forward. But they were at the bottom as well.
They may be setting him up for the find your voice arc, which is a very common Top Chef arc for sure. They may be setting up for that. I do think that I know y'all were talking last week a little bit about the Edgic of Top Chef. It doesn't really work like it does in Survivor and in other shows. But if you start to see, I do think that this is kind of one example that you can make a prediction that I think that he's going to be in this game for a while. Is that like they are setting him up as he worked at Nomad. He's not making his own dishes, right? Like I think that he may be getting set up for that type of redemption arc, which is honestly, if you think the producers are setting you up for that kind of arc, you definitely need to lean into it when you're answering questions. So hopefully he does. But like
I was saying, it could be that his find your voice not arc but segment in this episode was set up to contrast with Bailey's, because Bailey I think had a good find your voice arc in this episode as well. So either it was set up to kind of contrast the two in terms of finding your voice, or like the baton is being passed. Like Bailey did it and now it's Vinny's turn.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a real possibility. But I was going to say, I mean, Vinny, I want to say this too. I do believe in the entire history of all of Top Chef. Now, I may be missing just desserts, but the souffle has only ever been executed once before on Top Chef Masters by, what's the guy's name? He's famous for making really big, it's a little Cirque guy. I can't remember, but I think only on Top Chef Masters has anyone else been able to pull off a souffle in the middle of service or during the middle of a challenge, just because the timing on it is so difficult. And I worked in a restaurant where we did, like chocolate souffles to order. And it's one of those situations where, it's going to take 25, 30 minutes in the oven, no matter what. Like you're asking guests while they're finishing their entrees, if they want us to go ahead and fire one, like those are the kind of situations where it took a lot of skill. It took being brave. That's one of these things where souffles are, unto themselves, not necessarily a hard thing to make. But if you're worried about, are people going to open and slam the door of your oven 3 times before they realize your stuff is in there, right? Do you need to go stand guard in the oven to make sure that no one is opening the door, right? Like those are the kind of things that are like, are difficult. And the fact that he was able to execute on such a high level, he is, in my mind, even though it may be a little bit brown nosy, I think he's being creative and fun. Yeah. And like when someone says, "Hey, I want a souffle," and you're willing to do that, you weren't planning on doing it, but you can just mentally call up, okay, souffle, this is what needs to happen. Says a lot for his skill and talent and everything about what he's willing to do in this show. So I think that a real sort of, not necessarily dark horse, but I think he's, even though on the bottom this week, he's got to be considered a front runner for the season.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't see it brown nosing at all. I see it as listening and being able to pivot. Like he especially like even from the souffle perspective, like he probably had an idea of like, okay, like as they're like introducing the challenge before the souffle is even mentioned, he's thinking, I'm probably gonna do this, this, and this. But then he's like, oh, but here's an opportunity to still do something. So at least I think it speaks to, despite him kind of inserting and incorporating these callbacks to different places he's worked and different techniques he's learned, he's still able to kind of pivot to incorporate those. So I think he has a great degree of flexibility, which I think is nothing but a benefit here. The fifth team, Henry and Shuai, self-proclaimed Asian sensations, they went to BB's restaurant, a Filipino restaurant. Did you get a chance to check out BB's?
Yes, this one is a restaurant where I would definitely want to eat. Like if you go to their website, they have this weird 3D rendering of the building that you can kind of like a cursor and move around a little bit. But when you like look at the menu, it's like literally like 10 things. There's no descriptions on them. There's nothing. It's very like hole in the wall kind of. And when you like looking at the pictures of the people dining in the restaurant, it looks like they have like old fast food tables, and there's definitely sort of real homey kind of vibe to this restaurant. But I will tell you that there was a dish that was called it's called, I want to say that I think that they showed a picture of this when they're going to the restaurant. It's called Filipino spaghetti. And I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's got to be the same dish. When Top Chef is showing like reels of the dishes that they're making, there's a pile of noodles that has a red sauce, and you see them like, it looks like cheddar, like orange cheese. They're pouring over the top of this and onions on it. I'm not sure what this dish is, but I'm definitely gonna check out Filipino spaghetti. Maybe it's a common Filipino dish. I'm not familiar with it, but I was like, I saw on their menu, it says Filipino spaghetti. Like, what is that? And then I went back and sort of like looking at the introduction on the show. Like there's definitely a dish that I think is Filipino spaghetti that they featured in the reels to introduce the restaurant, which looked really incredible. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, this place looked awesome. Very different style. Like the website's very different style than, say, for instance, the Michelin starred restaurant, but it looked really cool.
Yeah, it looked a little kind of mom poppy in terms of like the exteriors and like some of the interior shots we got. So they Henry and Shuai ended up making a rose caldo with roasted pork kare kare, fermented pickles, and bagoong XO sauce. I had a difficult, just my lack of experience with Filipino food and some of the elements of this. I wasn't exactly able to picture what this would potentially taste like. I'd try it, but yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure where they were going to end up with this, except for the fact that they did not get. I was happy to see that their comments from the judges weren't as critique laden as, say, with the two who ended up on the bottom.
Yeah, and we've seen people do congee before on Top Chef in very successful ways. And I think that this is a good vehicle if you're looking for sort of a homey style of porridge. It does work really well. The combination of the XO sauce and the it's bagaong, because I think there's an extra you pronounce the syllable between the double O's. Is a cool another condiment that's kind of the description of the dish said XO / bagaong sauce, and so I'm not sure if they combined kind of those ingredients. I mean, they're both kind of, or if they kept them separate condiments on the. It was a little hard to tell both in the pictures and the description of the dish. But XO sauce is kind of like a Chinese, like Hong Kong based sauce. It does have a lot of like dried seafood in it, like oysters and shrimp, but it also has pork in there as well. So there are some similarities. The bagaong sauce is a little bit different in that it's mostly more made with like shrimp paste, but there are some similarities between the two sauces. They're definitely both big sort of umami kind of bomb sauces. And then, I mean, this dish to me it's the kind of thing that I would like to eat, and I think it's a good safe dish for them to execute. Like they're braising the pork in a sort of a heavily acidic, I think, kind of a heavy acid kind of a sauce. The comments were the judges thought the pork was a little bit dry, but you have all that porridge to help you deal with all of that. But I thought they executed this on a good level, and it made sense. And it's nice to see both of them get some redemption from the last episode. I will tell you that's one thing that sucks. Like, say for you're in the car with you and the other dude who were both in the bottom of the last episode going to shop at Whole Foods together. You know, it could be a little bit demoralizing. But the fact that they have such a good rapport and have sort of similar styles and background and what they cook, it means that I thought that they were going to mesh really well together. And where it may have been difficult for someone to go into a really homey sort of Filipino restaurant, like these guys coming from sort of an Asian background are going to be a little bit more okay in sort of like what it means to work with shrimp paste. Because if you've never worked with shrimp paste or never tasted something that has shrimp paste in it, you'd be like, you know, like it may be a lot for your senses. But I thought they did great. I was really awesome to see them rebound and glad to see them, you know, survive.
And I think two of the things I think that helped them out were, I can't remember if it was like on the way to the restaurant or if it was, you know, sometime later, but they were in the car and they were talking about how they were being very cautious about not letting their own like Chinese cooking tendencies overwhelm the what they were going to or already had learned from this restaurant, and that there's like, so you got that they understood the assignment of like that the Filipino elements had to shine through. And then also I think more than any other team, I think this was the team where they were raving about the different sauces and condiments that were coming along with the dishes. And I could almost tell, I don't think it was ever like explicitly stated, but when they were kind of raving about the experience they had, I almost got the sense that they were looking to, they wanted the judges and they wanted the people who were going to be trying their dish to almost like have the same experience that they had, like in terms of having the guests and the judges also like almost like have this notion of the Filipino sauce culture revealed to their diners as much as it was revealed to them. They wanted to make sure that was conveyed. So I thought that was really kind of a nice approach as well.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I was a little nervous when he said, well, at least the chefs didn't spit it out. After they tasted the food, I was like, oh no, they're not confident in this dish. But yeah, they did well. It was good to see them do. It was good to see them to bounce back this episode.
Yeah, when it was announced that they were safe, they both like they dropped to their knees and were like, oh God, thank you. Then lastly, we had our immune pair, Bailey and Tristan. They went to Sula's Modern Greek Cuisine. I wasn't sure if Sula's was the name or if it was supposed to be a possessive, like Sula's. I think Sula's Modern Greek Cuisine. My guess is it's actually the full last name, Sula's. But anyway, what was your take on if you got a chance to check out their website?
Yeah, this looks like kind of like a Greek fine dining. Is their menu pricing? It's expensive. Like for sure, it's definitely sort of high end. But it looks great. This is another one of these restaurants where like I wish there was some sort of like super high end Greek food near me and anywhere. Sort of like same way with like sort of how Chinese food gets pigeonholed into like takeout. At least for around here, Greek food is kind of similarly pigeonholed into sort of like are you going to get your your lamb gyro and take it home? I would love to have sort of more sort of like elevated Greek dining experiences. A cool thing about Greek culture, especially in the South, is that so many Greek immigrants came to the American South really in like the 60s and 70s that there are tons of Greek restaurants or restaurants that aren't necessarily Greek that are owned by Greek folks. And so there's great, like it's in Birmingham, especially like, oh yeah, one of the most famous barbecue restaurants. Well, it's his the owner that is sort of Greek immigrants who came over to open restaurants. Fish Market in Birmingham, the same way too. It's all Greek inspired. So there are restaurants really all over the South that have this Greek restaurant lineage. But I wish that there were some more high-end Greek kind of style restaurants. And there was sort of the Greek diet trend was popular several years ago. People were like, oh yeah, just grill some fish and throw it on the salad. And Greek food is way more than just sort of like put some yogurt on it. Greek food is way more than that. And it was good to see restaurants like this. I wish I knew some close to us that nearby to go check out. But their menu looks great.
I mean, I would take an all Saganaki diet any day. Like I'm sure that's the healthiest part, right? The flaming cheese.
And multiple moussakas on their menu.
Exactly.
It's sort of like, yeah. So.
They ended up making grilled octopus with Kalamata caramel glaze and charred green olive honey relish. Okay, can we talk about the olive honey caramelization? Because that just I want to try.
Yeah, I think it's a great combination. And I know that y'all were talking about caponata the other day. To me, caponata is sort of similar in that what you get is you get this sort of like fried eggplant, and then you toss it together with olives, capers, but also raisins, and there needs to be some sweetness in there. I've been taking raisin notes about all the raisin hate that happened over the past couple of weeks. But caponata is another good example. So for me, raisins and olives can absolutely work, and I'm more familiar with that combination, especially in caponata, which is Sicily is right around the corner from Greece, so it makes sense that a lot of these Mediterranean flavors show up in sort of similar ways in similar places. But I think that making a sort of sweet, tangy relish, briny relish that has some sweetness as well as savory is really great. And also really love now I think that was the relish, but then the sauce was made in how do they describe the sauce? Oh, the Kalamata caramel glaze is different than the green olive honey relish. And those things to me sounded, because it's kind of hard to tell. Like, if you look at the plate, there was a yellow, I think that was the relish that's underneath the octopus. But then, you hear him describing it like a barbecue sauce. That also makes perfect sense to me. Like, you have those sort of like ingredients that you puree together, you Kalamata olives, you caramelize it, you're adding some, they did say he added brown sugar, like they added sugar to that, right?
Yeah.
I think, and so to me, it makes sense. But I will tell you this one too. Octopus is one of those ingredients which can go very bad very quickly. I would consider it a risk on Top Chef to do octopus. Well, as soon as they said octopus, I was like, well, at least they've got safety. But octopus, when done really well, is awesome. But octopus can go south and turn to rubber very, very quickly. It usually takes sometimes several days to prepare. I don't know if you've ever watched you ever watch Jiro Dreams of Sushi? You know that movie? You ever, because
I've not seen it.
It's awesome, but in that movie they show you like how they prepare the octopus, and it's like definitely a multiple day, and they spend a lot of time like banging the octopus in the bottom of a pot, like really like banging the octopus in the bottom of the pot of an empty pot. And so octopus is tricky because you want it. It sounds like they nailed it right, because it sounded like Sarah, I think, who said it. It's exactly what you want. You want that little crispy, burnt outside edge. Then you want the tender meat on the center, and then like octopus can go bad very quickly. And so it was great to see that. When you've got immunity, you can take those kind of risks. You can work with a protein that might go south in a hurry, but they nailed it, and you got to give them credit for that. Now the whole freezing stuff too is one of those things where they're absolutely right about this. Yeah, freezing it can tenderize it. A lot of times seafood, especially sushi, freezing is used as a means to kill parasites. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with the quality of frozen octopus. And when it's done well, it can be great, whether it's frozen or whether it's right out the water.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the freezing as well to see if that was it was one that I almost had concern for them as a fourth team when they were saying, well, it's only frozen, but then they cut to Bailey explaining like she gave thought to it. She's like, no, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's good for the X, Y, and Z reasons. So I was much less worried for them. And obviously they had immunity, but still, like, just in terms of them turning out a dish that impressed the judges, I was pretty sure that it was going to be fine. So now we have the judges table, and we see that as mentioned earlier, Katiana and Cesar were at the top, as were Bailey and Tristan. And Bailey and Tristan end up getting back-to-back immunity weeks. So instead of this week we had 2 out of 12 chefs immune. Next week we have 2 out of 10 chefs immune. I didn't watch the previews for next week, Jim. We're not at Restaurant Wars yet, are we? Because I know it's typically at 8. I feel like in one of the last couple of seasons they did it at 10. I don't know if you caught that.
I did not watch the preview. Okay.
I tend not to, for, again, spoiler reasons, because they are horrible.
Yeah, they're bad about it.
The bottom 2 were Lana and Vinny and Kat and Corwin. I was pretty sure, because it seemed like they described Lana and Vinny's kind of missteps as more like not fully adhering to the intent of the challenge and letting the Indian culture and ingredients shine through, whereas Kat and Corwin's was more of a executional issue. And it ended up being gummy. And the moment I heard the word gummy in the script, I'm like, okay, that's the bigger faux pas, so to speak. So yeah, we see that Kat and Corwin do get eliminated and are sent to Last Chance Kitchen. Did you have this kind of the same thinking that it was going to be them based on the comments, or?
Yeah, I thought it was clear. Like I thought there was never really any doubt. I mean, I think it was good. Sometimes like Lana and Vinny, they may have needed, especially maybe Vinny needed like a wake up call. Like it is possible for you to be on the bottom. This dish was conceptually executed okay, but conceptually an issue. Like when all the judges are saying the chicken was cooked very well, but the chicken skin was very nice. But at the same time, was it really Indian? Was it Indian enough? They're talking about sort of the inspirations versus the execution. And I think 9 times out of 10, if you mess up the execution, you're going to be sent home before sort of a flawed concept of a dish that's a good dish, just maybe could use a little bit better inspiration. But yeah, I thought it was not a surprise or anything. I thought it was pretty clear that this was going to happen. And for most of the episode.
Yeah. And they even said at judges' table that the 2 good chefs were going to go home. Like there wasn't anybody who made a huge egregious mistake. Like no one messed up risotto or attempted risotto, which you should just go home for. But yeah, so they both ended up going, and we and I have a feeling that part of the, like I was saying, do we need 2 people eliminated? But I just have this feeling that they don't want to skip a week of Last Chance Kitchen, so we have to get 2 people in there so that they can battle. Would love to hear your perspective on a few things about Last Chance Kitchen. So they had, I believe, about 30 minutes to make a dish, but for the first 10 minutes, they weren't going to know what the surprise protein was going to be. So basically, they had to do all of their prep in the first 10 minutes. Then the protein was going to be revealed. But also at that time, all of their kind of cutting and chopping and sharp implements were going to be taken from them. And we saw 2 very different approaches. We had Kat, who was, I'm going to make a salad that is versatile, that I can then adapt as needed once I figure out the protein. And then we saw Corwin, who predicted correctly that the protein was going to be saltfish. Now, to my own horn, I also predicted that it was going to be saltfish. Did you see that coming as well?
Yeah, I thought that they both should have. That should have been the first thing in their mind, no matter what. I mean, I guess they could have. Tom could have just given them cod again, which would have been another option. But I was expecting for sure saltfish.
Yeah,
and I love this challenge. Like this is the kind of challenge for me, which are so much fun. Like, okay, like you get your challenge, so you got to be thinking of sort of like what are the sort of the base items that like I'm going to use for every dish. Well, like maybe it's a French dish. We're going to start where maybe a little bit more. You need mirepoix, so you get your onion, celery, carrots cut. That can be used for a million things. Or maybe you're going to take more of a Creole, like a Cajun kind of. Maybe I want Trinity instead, so I get sort of bell peppers instead of carrots. Or maybe it's going to be Chinese style dish, so I'm working on scallions and ginger and garlic is sort of the base for whatever I'm going to do. And so you kind of start with like things that are like super versatile. Like you want to make sure that you have knife work done. You may maybe she found the Romanesco. You go pick a beautiful piece of whatever looks good in the Last Chance Kitchen, like grab it and like cut it, chop it. Or like she did, pick things that can tear. Like maybe you want to use mint, tear mint, don't cut it. But I thought but this is a challenge that I love. Like you think you should start like sort of the base things, what you're going to need. And then like, it's easy to forget things like salt or like, oh yeah, that green curry can that I was going to open. It's not one that you can just pop off. You have to actually have a can opener to open it. Like those are kind of mistakes that, you should have been up on. But this is the kind of challenge which is the most fun. Like you just got to think, what is the most versatile? What are the cool ingredients that are available in the kitchen? Like Romanesco, I would have like grabbed it immediately like she did. And then like, no matter what the protein is, I have got my bases covered. I would have a heavy cream ready to go. I would make sure that there's just sort of the most versatile things. And then sort of like what looked the best in the kitchen at the time. Like that's where I would have started. And then once you get the salt cod, you can sort of go from there and figure out what's what.
Yeah, I was thinking like just strategically how I would approach this would have been like I guessed that it would be salt cod, and I was like, well, let me do 2/3 of my prep as if it's going to be salt cod, but let me do like 1/3 of my prep as if it potentially is a range of other things. Like there's unless I know otherwise, and correct me, it's like if you prep something, you don't necessarily have to use it. I mean, there's some challenges where, like, specifically part of the challenge is if you take an ingredient, you must use the ingredient. We've seen that before. But here, I think you said it's like, get the heavy cream, get the Trinity, like figure out like what are the classes of protein that this could be, if not salt cod, and figure out like, well, if it's like more of a beef or a beef adjacent, I could lean into these ingredients, or because it wasn't just that they also couldn't, I believe, go back into the pantry to get new ingredients after the 10 minutes as well.
It said only pots and pans.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, for sure. Like my first trip would be like, I would grab salt, heavy cream, like sort of the most basic, onion, celery, carrots, then whatever looked good. And then I would just sort of gather it all and just start cutting. I think that you want to like pick things that are mushrooms. Are there some mushrooms? Mushrooms will be fine with any protein. I think that's where you want to start. And I think that then once you get the protein, you make that final decision in your head, and then you sort of jump in for that last 20 minutes. But even 20 minutes is a long time if you're not having to cut anything, or, so this is a cool challenge. It's a really cool challenge, I thought. But you need to spend that first 10 minutes like running and then like chopping and then making sure everything is open.
I thought for sure when Tom revealed that it was salt cod, I was like, oh, Corwin's got this in the bag. Like, he predicted it. He put all of his eggs in that basket in terms of like this is what he was going to focus on, and I was surprised when he didn't end up winning. So the dishes, I think I have the switched up in my spreadsheet, but Kat made a salt cod panzanella with fish sauce vinaigrette, pickled romesco, and maitake mushrooms. She ended up advancing in.
Tom said romesco. It is romanesco.
Romanesco, okay. And then Corwin made a coconut green curry inspired salt cod with burnt scallions. Was he inspired there because he couldn't get the can open?
Well, it sounded like Tom, even in the judging, it sounded like Tom was saying, like, I think if the curry would have been in there, he may have changed the outcome of this challenge a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, until we got the record scratch of Corwin not having the can open, I had thought that that he had this in the bag, that it was his to lose. But at that point, I was like, oh, is he going to be able to pivot enough based on what he has? And I think, ultimately it was Kat's more flexible / versatile approach to how she prepped that ended up winning this for her.
Yeah, I think that's true. I will say, I think that maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm just kind of want to pat myself on the back on this, but I think that they changed a rule in quick fires and in Last Chance Kitchen for something that I did specifically, because I do remember hearing people say, oh, that's so smart. No one's ever done that before. Because what they do is you're set up in a station, you get a table, and under the table you have a bus tub. That's your trash tub. But sort of the very first thing that I always did was I would take the bus tub and run to the pantry with it and use it like a basket. But I think that they've stopped people.
You supermarket sweeped it. You just kind of just grabbed everything.
Yeah. But I think they've changed that rule because you don't see anybody doing it anymore. Like, I know that the couple seasons afterwards, everybody was doing it. And I think that they may have stopped it there. So I think you can only carry stuff in your arms, which does make it more difficult. Like if you're having one of those challenges where you can only go to the pantry so many times, or you can only spend a minute in the pantry, or any of that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's a strategy. You need to have a strategy for sure in a Last Chance Kitchen like this. And I thought Kat's strategy was really good. And she's right. There's nothing wrong with a really well-composed salad. It can be an incredibly beautiful dish, especially if you're taking really good care and showing techniques and the components that you're using. I mean, and her being from LA, I'm sure that she gets probably lots of like raw food requests and all the sort of like whatever sort of LA diet is hip at the time, which usually does include raw kind of vegetables or kind of salad kind of stuff.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. And I know that we've been throwing out questions to you virtually throughout the season, or audibly throughout the season. But before we get to those, like, I probably should have asked this like right at the front, but like broadly, Destination Canada, what have you been thinking of the season?
Oh, I want to pat myself on the back for this too. Do you remember the last time I was on this podcast? I said, hey, why don't you go to Niagara? I said, hey, that's Gail's country. There should be in America, Niagara. And there was no spoiler for me. Like I had no idea that it was going to be in Canada, but I think, because remember we talked about Iceland, and I'll tell you where I do hope that they go to Prince Edward Island. That's kind of the one place I want to make sure that I really hope. I think they're missing it if they don't go to Prince Edward Island. I know it's not too far away from where they are, but I think Canada is great. And sort of like it's hard to, I don't know, I was going to make a war of Northern aggression joke, but it's so, the Canada should be, I don't know. I'm glad, Top Chef does a good time. I'm surprised there are no opening chyrons and say we support our friends to the north or any of that kind of stuff on the show. I really expected there to be some of that before the season opened, but yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a good place to go. I think that there's tons to choose from. I think that there's still tons of potential. Like, I really hope they drag them to Niagara Falls. I would love to see it. How about a Niagara wedding challenge? Would be awesome. Make them cook on a boat in the bottom of the falls. Have them cater a wedding or somebody who just got married. Right at the bottom of the waterfalls. Some of the best seafood in the world comes from Prince Edward Island, whether it's mussel farms, oyster farms, just sort of like seafood processing area. That's one of the best, like that whole New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island area. So much amazing seafood comes from that part of the world. And they should I really like a trip to Prince Edward Island would be awesome. A lot of times the oyster aquaculture, like there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens there. I spent some time this past weekend with Elena Terry, who you might remember is sort of the First Nations representative from last season. I was just at an event with her, and she is doing so great. There's still a lot of potential too for there to be a First Nations Canada episode. Will we get into some French-speaking Canadian stuff? That would be cool too. So the season is great. The setting is great. I really hope they take more advantage of what's of the surroundings.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the first episode challenge where they have like the different chefs kind of repping the different regions and having to use ingredients from each region. I hope that is not the extent to which we get more around the country. A little bird did tell me that they do go to Niagara. So that will be coming up. But I don't know the extent beyond that. Because it is.
I know she probably can't say, but if Haley did not go to be a guest judge on one of these events, I'm going to be really disappointed. Really disappointed.
Yeah, she pushes Kristen aside and goes, "Pack your knives and go." She takes over that role. Well, let's. I know you came with some answers to some questions that we had. I will turn it over to Chef Jim's Q&A corner if you want to, because I can't even remember, especially some of these Friday night ones. Those get a little crazy. What do you got for us?
One, truffle oil. Look, I am not diametrically opposed to the taste of truffle oil. I know that it's definitely like if you're getting some French fries and people are covered in Parmesan and thyme, a little bit of truffle oil is okay. But for me, truffle oil is its own thing. It's kind of like butter flavored oil. For example, is that there is real truffle oil made with real truffles. The problem is that truffles are so expensive that you have to pay through the nose for that, and you might as well just buy the real truffles in the first place. So truffle oil is really more like truffle flavored oil, but that truffle flavor doesn't really taste like truffles. There is a wild kind of difference between what truffle oil tastes like and what real truffles taste like. We served real truffles in the restaurant for pretty decent when they're in season and when they're available, and if the price isn't too crazy on them. Like white truffles are wildly expensive, but black Italian truffles you can still find a fairly reasonable price. I want to say like one sort of small truffle usually costs me about $60 or $70 at the restaurant, so it does make it possible to use like whether you're shaping it to finish a dish or whether right now we're serving it a steak sauce with black truffle velouté. So we're taking like chicken stock and thickening it with roux and then, shaving a bunch of black truffle in it. And so you get that truffle taste in the sauce, but the truffle taste that's in the sauce tastes nothing like what truffle oil is or tastes like or any of that kind of stuff. It's sort of like, I'm not mad at truffle oil. I don't really prefer it. It's not really my go-to. We don't use it in the restaurant. I don't hate it, but it's not. It's one of those things. It's kind of a phony ingredient. I will tell you, like, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just like, so like truffle oil does not taste like real truffles to the extent that candy corn does not taste like real candy or real corn.
Yeah, that's a fair description there.
And that's why both are good for a sabotage ingredient in that one challenge. But anyway, go ahead, continue.
Yes. But yeah, that is the truffle oil spiel.
Okay.
But people have learned to like that taste, and I'm sort of one of those people too. Like I don't hate it. I can smell it a mile away. When it's used as like a finishing thing on something, sometimes it overpowers whatever it's supposed to, whatever people are putting it on. So it is kind of one of those dangerous ingredients. Let's see here. The next kind of thing. Oh, actually, this one you talked about last week is fennel pollen. Fennel pollen is one of my favorite ingredients. I know that you don't like fennel in general, but there are other pollens that are available to be purchased or to harvest yourself. Fennel pollen is costly per gram or per ounce, kind of in the same like caviar, truffle kind of price range. It's very expensive because to be done the right way, it has to be harvested by hand. Now, fennel can grow really big. Like you can get giant fennel bulbs to grow in the ground. And the bigger it is, the better it is for the flowers, if you're looking for the flowers or if you're looking for the fronds. But, you know, fennel, like herb flowers, they look kind of like a star, kind of like cluster, like a really beautiful, like a cluster. When they have these tiny little pollen, it is yellow, like the pollen that makes you sneeze. It is like those little yellow flowers. And what they do, they're hand harvested where they take them, they pull up those little flowers and then they kind of shake them and some people toast them. But it is a very special ingredient. It does taste like fennel. So you do have that anise sort of licorice flavor in there, but it is more delicate. And I'll tell you, we use it in a lot of things because one of the most amazing things that it does, more so than the flavor, is more the smell. Like when you use it as a finisher on something that is hot, it activates that fennel and it really you really can waft in that great fennel smell, which is a little bit sweeter than your regular fennel, but it is an awesome ingredient. Dill pollen is another one you could check into. And there any herbs that have that cool little flower, that like sunburst flower, they or like a Sputnik light. That's what they look like. They look like a Sputnik light. That's what those flowers look like. And so, yeah, it's an awesome ingredient. There are other pollens that you can buy. There are deals on you can buy fennel pollen off Amazon. There are some cheaper versions. There are some fennel pollens too that if it is cheap fennel pollen, it probably almost always has toasted seeds in it that are crushed. So you do kind of have to be careful about, is it real fennel pollen or not? It should be expensive if it's the real stuff. Okay. Does that answer your fennel pollen question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I would try it.
Yeah.
I would try it.
But it is fennel. But I would tell you, if you're interested in sort of how pollens activate when they hit hot food, that dill pollen is a great one. Like if you sear a piece of salmon and you want to finish it with something cool that's going to be fragrant and really enhance the dish, a little dill pollen is a great choice on there. And is also readily available. I think you can Amazon dill pollen. You can find a pollen farm, which is harvesting herb flowers like that and drying them themselves. It's cool ingredients, good ingredients. Okay. Another big one is tartar. There's a lot of tartar in the season, which is good. I am a tartar fan. We serve tartar. There's questions about what's the difference between salmon tartar, lamb tartar, beef tartar.
Ooh. It's what has salmon. What has lamb? Go ahead. Sorry.
But sort of the cool thing, let me tell you the cool story about tartar is obviously traditionally a French dish, and it is not traditionally any of those ingredients. And in fact, if you want to know a place if you want to find a place, like if you're in Paris, you're looking for a Parisian cafe where you can get some authentic tartar, you want to look for a horse head that's painted gold hanging over the door. It doesn't have to be painted gold, but you're looking for a horse head over the door because traditionally in French cuisine, tartar is made from horse meat. So that is kind of where it starts. Now, horse meat, I've never had any horse meat. It's supposed to be very lean. In fact, America, you can eat horse meat if the horse dies naturally. You can't harvest a horse for the purpose of meat, but say, for instance, if you want to pull an RFK, you notice there's a dead horse on the side of the road, you really want to try some horse meat, you could load it up on top of the car, drive it home, and legally eat the horse meat if you wanted to. But we care about Mr. Ed and sort of the all the horses in this country. So, but tartare is almost always has some kind of combination of more sort of briny ingredients. It should usually have like a cornichons and capers. There's usually mustard. Some people, there's debates about like a mayonnaise. Annie Petrie introduced me to using mayonnaise in tartare, which is a wonderful addition. It does change the look of it a little bit. In fact, we were using Anthony's smoked mayonnaise as a bed to put tartare on top of for a while at the restaurant. But usually salmon tartare tends to be kind of more Asian in style. Not always, but it generally tends to be more of a soy sauce based kind of starting point instead of a mustard, olive oil, cornichon, caper kind of mixture. But tartares are great. You're looking for lean stuff, so lamb does make a good tartare. If you're talking about, like, we use hanger steak for tartare in the restaurant, it's also pretty lean. A tenderloin is a great choice for tartare. Like, a lot of times if you're serving a Chateaubriand, you're serving the center part of the loin, which leaves you sort of the bits on the edges to do something with. Tartare is a good multi-use in restaurants for that. You have any other tartare questions there?
No. I think I might be the sole tartare fan on the panel. So I believe that Haley and Latanya have not tartared it.
But yeah, I like the raw yolk on it is critical at the end. And actually we're serving tartare now at the restaurant, which we're serving as sort of a combo of sauce grabiche, which is kind of like fancy egg salad, that's also made with capers and cornichon. But really, I was just thinking, because we're making caper and cornichon tartare and caper and cornichon grabiche for different dishes. I said, well, maybe it would be cool to kind of combine those into one dish. It is working pretty well in the restaurant. I do think we kind of missed sort of that raw yolk on there, but at the same time, it is a kind of a cool addition. It gets the kind of like almost that kind of mayonnaise in there as well. Mm-hmm. But I'm a giant tartare fan. Okay, yeah, and then kind of the last thing, maybe I'm missing some of them on the list, but there's really sort of a lot of raisin hate in the last, or maybe it was the episode before the last episode. But now there's a lot of people made fun of sort of like don't show up at the cookout with potato salad with raisins in it. Like, yes, that's probably bad. And if you're using red grape raisins to do something cooking, you can do stuff with that. That's perfectly fine. But for me, golden raisins are almost always a great addition to dishes, whether it's korma. Like, I love golden raisins in Indian cuisine. I love golden raisins, like we mentioned before, in the caponata. Golden raisins in combination with like basil, goat cheese, pine nuts, balsamic. That's a real traditional Italian combination that uses raisins. And so there are lots of good savory uses for raisins. I'm a big raisin fan. Here's another sort of thing. The secret ingredient in A1 steak sauce is raisin adjacent. You may not realize that. Prunes. Yep. Yes. Prunes. That's another sort of good example of like getting sort of sweet tartness into a sauce that, raisins have sort of good savory applications a lot. Agrodolce very famously uses the golden raisins. So there are great golden raisin usages out there. Awesome. And I think that makes it through the notes. Is there anything else that I missed, or?
Not that I can think of. No, I think you covered the big ones, and we'll kind of obviously would love to have you back again some point this season, and I'm sure that we'll continue to have questions. Let's jump to the what did we eat, or in your case potentially also what did we make this week. I didn't make a whole lot. I was traveling in Boston for an RHAP event. Also, just thanks a ton to the folks who came up to me and said that they were like, love the podcast, big listeners. So quick shout out to Emmy and Matilda. It was great to meet you. Tommy Guam, the whole O'Connell clan, just everybody who came up. It was just really, really, made my visit complete. So want to thank all of you. So I ate a lot. I had to write down, and I'm going to open up with, for the first time, I had pistachio ice cream and rum raisin ice cream. And also at the airport lounge on the flight back, I had rice pudding with golden raisins. So I just wanted to make sure I called that out. I also had steak tartare with cornichons and quail egg on this trip. Lobster grilled cheese, clam chowder twice. I had a burger with goat cheese, pancetta, and walnuts on it. I went to an Irish pub where I had fish and chips and a blackberry bramble. Don't know if they go together that well, but I had them. Went to a Thai restaurant where I had berry crab rangoon. I think it was crab cranberries were worked in, but I couldn't really taste them. I also had a crispy duck drunken noodle there. You could basically pick the protein. I was like, I'm going to try duck. Went to a French restaurant the last night there where I had a French onion mac and cheese, some ham and cheese croquettes, and a chicken truffle linguine. And then today, when I got back, I treated myself to a Detroit-style supreme pizza, and I also bought a strawberry mango pie to have later. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that was I ate a lot this week, and so much of it was so good, and I probably missed some things. But anything stick out from your week in terms of foodstuffs that you had or made?
Yes, well, I got back from this big James Beard event in Nashville and had some really great food in Nashville. I did this place called The Marketplace, which is a James Beard Most Outstanding Restaurant nominee. Really incredible food. I ate at Chai Pani, which is a wonderful restaurant owned by Marwan, a friend of mine up there. I had really excellent food in Asheville. I will say that Asheville has done an amazing job recovering from the flooding and the hurricanes from Helene. They have bounced back incredibly well. There's still, anytime there's a natural disaster, there's always tons and tons and tons to do. It will take years for them to get over it completely. But if you're thinking about a place to visit, Asheville, the downtown area, restaurants are open, the hotels are open. You can get back out and you can still tour the Biltmore Estate, and there's still plenty of hiking and sort of all the stuff that makes Asheville cool. Has bounced back in a good way. As far as stuff that I've been working on in the restaurant, first thing is that another thing about Asheville is that RHAP season has just started, and RHAPs are one of my favorite ingredients to work with. They grow from really the Carolinas all the way through North Alabama, so we should be starting to get RHAPs next week, and we'll do a celebration of RHAP tasting menu where at least 4 of the 5 courses will be RHAP related. RHAP's a little too onion and garlicky to make it into a dessert, at least for most people. But we will for sure have 4 courses of RHAP-centric dishes and a dessert. So I'm super excited about that. We've also started serving escargot again in the restaurant, which I'm also a big fan of, because it is this sort of spring onion season as well. So we are taking spring onions and green garlic. Green garlic is another one of my favorite spring ingredients. We are sous videing in butter, a little bit of sherry vinegar, salt, a touch of fennel pollen, and both the green garlic and spring onions for 24 hours. We sous vide them together and then puree that and use that as the butter that we use to top the snails in. Now, I do prefer to put breadcrumbs directly on the snail instead of just having bread on the side. We don't make bread other than biscuits, and so unless you're serving baguette, really, biscuits, you can't really use a biscuit to stop that kind of snail butter like you would a baguette. But so we put the breadcrumbs on top of it. It's one of my favorite dishes, utilizing some great spring ingredients, and I'm excited. Sometimes our menu, like if you come at certain times of the year, sometimes our menu is very French. And if you come sometimes in the year, sometimes the menu is more Asian. Sometimes if it's more Southern based on like what's in season. And like sort of right now, we're kind of like especially post Mardi Gras, we're kind of leaving the French season, and we're kind of getting into more like great Southern food. And it's been great. It's been great the restaurant has been great. We are staying busy. We are making lots of cool food. And I'm always excited to walk into the restaurant, and excited that this time of year, once you make it through the winter season, like serving turnips and turnip greens since November. I love them so much, but I'm always happy this time of year to send them down the road so we can revisit them come next November. But we're really about to hit all the sort of great Southern produce is already starting to roll in, and it starts with spring onions, ramps, and green garlic. So that's always a good time of the year for me.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is the year I finally make it down to Mobile and get into the Hummingbird Way. So like I will keep you posted if that happens. I've got some friends down there. So thank you for joining. Not just because you are always a delight to have on the podcast, but also I couldn't have predicted that I'd be flying solo here. And so you keep me from having to just monologue about dishes. So But again, your energy and expertise is always appreciated, and we'd love to have you back. So if people want to follow you, your work, your food, like where are some of the best places to kind of keep track of Jim?
Well, I've been in sort of a year-long fight with Netflix with Facebook about getting my pages back. This is crazy. I have my restaurant Facebook page maybe 6,000 followers, which is a pretty good number for a restaurant page that's been open 4 years. So a decent number. So my page was hacked and taken over and stolen. And the people who took it, they left the name the same for a while, but then they eventually changed the name. But they literally post 3 Johnny Carson videos a day. And they took my page from 6,000 followers to 120,000 followers in like 6 months, which is mind-blowing. It shows the stupidity of the internet. But I would love to reclaim my page with all those followers on them, but I don't haven't yet. But I am easy to find on Facebook. My fan page and my personal page, they're both at Chef Jim Smith. I'm easy to find on Instagram the same way, at Chef Jim Smith. And at the Hummingbird Way is still up and running, but kind of, because it was linked to that other Facebook account. So I have issues there. But it's easy to find the Hummingbird Way spaces on the restaurant as well too. I am trying to, I am on Blue Sky, which I am using to live. I don't know, people maybe not ski, but I am using to live tweet episodes of Survivor when I can. So you can find me on there live on Blue Sky on Wednesday evenings, usually, if I can get away from the restaurant. But some other big news. I do think that hopefully by the time this video airs, my YouTube page will be up and running, which I have done all the filming for the first video, and editing is in the middle of the process on. My new YouTube channel, I think it's going to be In the Kitchen with Jim, where what I do is I take a really terrible Instagram/YouTube recipe instructional video, I break it down to this inspiration to make my own dish. So the first one should be up and posted hopefully by the time this podcast airs. So please, on our path to the first follower, please, like and subscribe once we get that up and running, which should be this week. Also, the space next door to my current restaurant will be our private wine cellar, dining room, and I think it'll be an even nicer tasting menu restaurant only, maybe just on the weekends. But we should have that up and running within the next couple of months. And I'm not sure if I announced this the last time I was on the show, but we are opening a compost farm and regenerative agricultural center, which will be the only one like it in the state of Alabama, where we will collect compostable materials from neighborhoods and local restaurants and sell them. So I will have another product to sell. You will be able to buy Delta Dirt online through Amazon, hopefully soon. Now, this has been a big project, and it's taken me really 2 years to sort of understand the legal stuff, understand the math of how this needs to operate, and just to sort of like find land. Like, I sold my car a few months ago and bought a truck. So like there is sort of like the stuff that you need to make a farm. We are very close. I think probably within the next 6 months or so, we will have a compost farm and a regenerative agricultural center where we're, no-till farming stuff and planting trees. We'll grow sunflowers. We'll have beehives. We'll grow stuff for the restaurant, and we'll also make compost. And so I have a lot of stuff coming down the pipe, and I'm very excited about all of it. But sort of the most immediate thing is that YouTube page. Like, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, please continue to like and subscribe. And Facebook, the Facebook thing is so freaking annoying. Like, you hate to just like wipe it out and start over. But I'm almost to that place, So.
Yep.
But
let's talk after I hit the stop recording.
I will say the only success I had reclaiming it last time was when you helped me out. And I paid to get verified, which gets you actual support. It's just wild. I'm sure that tons of people have dealt with this, but it just stinks that somebody can steal your monetized page, take it over, gather 100,000 new subscribers, and then take it and run. Like, why couldn't they just make their own Johnny Carson fan page instead of stealing my page with 6,000 followers? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. So
if I remember, it didn't start out with Johnny Carson. I think it started out trying to sell trucks.
Yes, There was definitely sort of a fake scam where they used my name to say like, oh yes, my uncle is having an estate sale. Anybody want to buy this F-150? I was getting like people like friends of mine and other chefs and people
I
like
messaged you.
yeah, you messaged me. People like I got a message from like Sheldon in Hawaii being like, "Are you selling a skid steer?" And I was like, "No, I'm not selling a skid steer." And so it has been a mess. My social media. I apologize to the people who are trying to figure out what I'm up to about my social media. It's just sort of sometimes I could be stubborn about like not wanting to give stuff up or starting over, and that is kind of where I where I've gotten to. But what would be awesome is if I could steal that page back and keep all those followers. Yeah, now they've done all the work for me. Or maybe I'll just make my own Johnny Carson page and then change it over to the hummingbird way. Yeah.
There you go. Well, thanks for coming. If anybody wants to follow my shenanigans, your best bet is to go at Curt Clark on Instagram. I was terribly remiss in the amount of food photos I posted from Boston. I think I have like more escape room photos up from that trip than I do food photos. But yeah, so your best bet in hearing what I ate in Boston, well, you probably just listened through it, like probably like 5-7 minutes ago. But otherwise, follow me at Curt Clark on Instagram. In the meantime, we look forward to talking to everybody about episode 6 next week. And in the meantime, pack your knives and go. Take care.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.